Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. It's wonderful to see some of you. We just met last week, and also, of course, the rest of you that I have had the greatest opportunity to meet during your orientation. So thank you again, everybody. I know Friday is a tough day to allocate time at this hour. So thank you for your commitment to this conversation. So before we go any further, can I get some feedback through the chat, whether you could hear me okay? Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for those of you who gave me feedback. So as we are going through this conversation, if any time, if you have difficulty hearing me clearly, please let me know, okay? So today we are together to talk about something that we always talk about, but sometimes struggle to get a good hold of, and that is time management. So let's take a look at what are our opportunities or the goals for this conversation. I have three goals. One is we will examine the factors and behaviors that contribute to inefficient time utilization and procrastination. So it's very, very important, as we always talk about, understand, become self-aware. What are some of the challenges or some of our own attitudes and behaviors that might be contributing to procrastination or our inability to manage the time. Then, of course, once we take a look at it, we will also look at what are some of the ways, techniques and tools that we will be able to adapt to use or adapt in more better time management. And then, of course, very, very importantly, time management is also another competency that has to come from within, which means that we all need to make a personal commitment and actually apply it. Otherwise, this will become just another piece of information. So with these three goals in mind, let me pose a question. For you as a Vista leader, why do you think time management is important? So when you send your responses, reflections through the chat, please do make sure that you choose all participants under send to, so that way everybody can see what you are sharing. So let's get some ideas. Why do you think as a Vista leader it's important? Exactly. So if we are not managing our own time, our ability to help our Vista leaders, Vista members will be limited. Yes, to have control over things. Of course, we have so many demands on our day-to-day life. So how do we go about meeting those efficiently? Thank you. Yes, prioritizing is a huge part of time management, and to be trustworthy. Yes, when we manage our time efficiently and effectively, we are also gaining trust from the people that we work with, because they can trust our ability to manage or deliver or accomplish things as we have committed to. Great. So these are some great thoughts. So let's look at nothing new. Most of what you see on the screen have been shared. So it does, right? When we manage our time efficiently, it also increase our own self-confidence, and as one of you mentioned, our ability to be on top of things. Of course, it leads to performance efficiency and productivity. And another big piece, I would say, is it reduces stress. how many of you in your own day-to-day lives or at times at work at least become so stressful that when you cannot or when you know that you have, when you don't have enough time and when you have to meet a deadline and you know when you are going to be behind, does that create stress? It does all the time, right? So it's also another benefit. Okay, so the rest I think are sort of what you had brought to the table. So with that, let's spend a moment talking about one of our big themes whenever we talk about time management. It's procrastination. And I can attest to this. I'm sure some of you also might be able to relate to this at a personal level, because most human beings at different times end up doing exactly what you see on the screen. So, what is procrastination, right? At least the dictionary tells us it is about, which is very, very important for us to keep in mind, to put off intentionally and habitually, right? So it is happening with great thinking. Sometimes we may be conscious or unconscious about it. It might become unconscious when it becomes a habit, but it is something that we do intentionally. So as you know, in psychology, they also pointed out it is a chronic, it's a lifestyle for those actually do it on a regular basis. Now, of course, I think the hope for each one of us, if we do happen to have this habit, is that procrastination is very selective. What do we mean by that? When we say procrastination is very selective, let's get some thoughts through the chat. What does that mean to you? What does that sound to you? From a practical sense, when we say procrastination is very selective, let's get a thought or two through the chat. Exactly, thank you. That's exactly, as you can see from the chat, Steve, that's what it is. Because now Steve always would find time, if I may use your example, Steve, with your kind permission, to do what he really loves to do, right? No matter what's on the plate. As you can see, yes, Jessica, I'm sure, sometimes you also find time to be able to take a nap, right? So it's interesting. I'm sure we ourselves say it, and we also hear other people saying. Sometimes at workplace, somebody would say, "Oh, I really don't, didn't have time last week to do this." But then if you ask them, "Hey, did you have time to watch your favorite TV show?" They would say, "Of course." So we all can, right? We all can be very selective about how we go about that. Thank you, everyone. So that's a good reminder, because we have to accept that, and also we have to recognize that. In a way, what it does when we recognize it, it tells us we still have control over this, because if we can be selective about what we procrastinate, that means we have some control that we can manage it ourselves, what we procrastinate and what we don't. Okay, let's ask ourselves, why do we procrastinate? I'm sure sometimes you come across with your Vista members frustrations. I know I have spoken to some of you personally about your situations that you are being challenged at times. And one of the things that I see for some of you is when your members are not managing their time and meeting expectations on time. So Why do you think either the members or ourselves or human beings, especially at workplace, why do you think people procrastinate? It could be your own reasons too. So let's get some ideas, because I think we need to always start with the question why. So we address the real causes when we are working with people and ourselves when it comes to managing time or addressing procrastination. Why do you think we, ourselves, other people procrastinate at workplace? Thank you. Yes, something they don't like, not feeling confident. Thank you. Don't know how to do a task exactly. Or being overwhelmed. Yes, that's a contributing factor or a cause for some people. What else? Think about, even in your case, not knowing where to start. Indeed. Yeah, burnout is something we see very frequently at the workplace, unfortunately, but that's a reality check. What else? So and also, like, in addition, think about when you procrastinate and you have a great reason why you procrastinate at work, some work task. What are some of the other reasons you may get into that mode, or your members might demonstrate that behavior? Anything else comes to anybody's mind? These are great. Yep, fear of failure. That's a big thing as well. Thank you. So let's take a look at what are some of the common ones out there. You know, based on some research, there are many reasons as you saw, but they say there are 5 key reasons that always help us as leaders to keep in mind why do people procrastinate. And thank you for not enough resource. Exactly, that's one of these key reasons. So one reason, as some of you pointed out, we all know that, including our own selves, when we are not interested in something, doing something, or when we don't have that passion, we don't want to do that, right? So we find ways to postpone that activity. So that's one of the key reasons that why people procrastinate at the workplace. Number 2, lack of knowledge or the skills. I think one of you pointed out that clearly. When we don't know how to do something, one way somebody might cope up with that is by procrastination. Now let's think about it, right? Let's say we have a Vista member and the person is expected to accomplish or deliver something. And we also have the assumption that that individual should be equipped to be able to do that. That's why that individual was recruited and placed in that position. However, let's say for some reason that individual may not necessarily have enough skills or the knowledge to perform it. So sometimes this individual could use procrastination as a way of avoiding the task and not having to admit that the person does not have the skills or the knowledge to do it, depending on different personalities. So that way, you know, when we say somebody may be demonstrating procrastination, that's something also we need to ask ourselves. Could this be a red flag of a different cause? Because we might identify that member's behavior with a wrong reason, like the person may be not interested or doesn't have passion, but that may not necessarily be the case. So that's why you have to keep these factors in mind and see which ones might be coming into play. Another big one, and some of you are also culprits of this, which makes you a victim, at the end of the day. And that is saying not being able to say no to additional work demands or work requests, especially when it is outside of what your primary responsibilities are. So let's see, how many of you can let us know through the chat, how many of you have this challenge of saying no at the workplace? Okay, thank you, Steve, taking the leadership, being very courageous, sharing. Yes, okay, now we see, right? We have several of you who are very honest about and courageous about it, being that you are at times having difficulty saying no. And there are some of our members, leaders here, who I'm sure have sort of honed that skill to be able to say no, which is great. So this is very, very important, because what happens, even our members, when we can relate to this because we also share this, most of us, and then think about a member having the same challenge, not being able to say no to the site when other people, whether it's the supervisor or other people at the organization, when they ask them to do things that is more than what they can serve on their plate, or that is outside of their work, if they cannot say no, then of course, so as you know, when somebody says, if somebody says yes to something like additional work or work unrelated to their work, that means they are saying no to something else, right? Because there's so much a person can do. So that's a very, very important skill that we also have to develop ourselves, enhance, as well as help our members to be able to develop that. And this should not, and I emphasize this should not come from a place of being mean, right? This is not about an attitude of being mean, but this is a skill that has to develop, and also the way somebody says no has to be, framed and shared in a way that we don't offend other people, but we say no, and our ability to be able to clarify is very, very important, why we are saying no. Because otherwise, this skill could be recognized as an attitude by others. Oh, this person doesn't want to do anything, right? We sometimes hear that too. So that's because they are missing the reasons why this person is saying no to something. So that's a very important piece to keep in our mind. More we can kind of clarify it clearly, our ability to say no also become better. Then we become more confident. And then also another way that we can avoid not having to go here is by, setting clear expectations, norms, and boundaries with people that work with. So then we can minimize unnecessary requests and demands that comes along our way, work-wise. All right, so next one is, one of you said exactly the same wording, fear of failure, right? Sometimes we procrastinate, or people could procrastinate because, they don't want to fail in that task. They don't, they may not have enough confidence. So they are like, okay, better not to do this because I do not want to come across as a failure. Now, you also see on the screen, that might be surprising some of you when you look at fear of success. Psychologically, that is also for some human beings a reason at the workplace to procrastinate things. What they say, for some individuals, if they do something then they also unconsciously or consciously, deep underneath, they are thinking, okay, what if it is successful? Then I will, what would come along my way? That is there going to be more work, or is my work situation is going to be outside of my comfort zone? So it could be any reason. Even success, could be a reason that people might fear of success, that they may walk away or postpone something. And then the last one, lack of energy. Now, this is one of the pieces, because if you do time management, do a research, or go to the Google University, or do any other search, there are so many resources, literature, theories that we find. Now, one of the things that is new to the time management thinking is this thing called lack of energy. And now there is more and more focus given to this piece, and I also want to spend a little time with you all looking at this piece of lack of energy. So there are several books written about that focuses time management and specifically focuses on energy aspect. And this is one of these books called The 10 Steps to Successful Time Management. So what some of these researchers are telling us, time management is not about managing time in a technical way, because every day we have 24 hours. That is a given. We cannot change that. We cannot manage the time that way, right? Whether we like it or not, they come and they go. Just because I want to have an extra hour, I cannot extend my 24-hour day to a 25, technically speaking. But where people truly have management, time management is actually, what is it? It's about self-management, which we always talk about. And the other big piece is energy management. So what do we mean by energy management? We know that when our energy is at a higher level, our ability to perform is so very different when our energy is drained, right? So sometimes we don't think about it when in relation to time management. So what I would like you to do, think about this question. If you are willing to, share it through the chat, at least one activity as an example, that would be great. But even if you are not willing to share it through chat, that's fine. But I just want you to at least take a moment and think about it, meditate on these questions. So think about an activity or two that energizes you at the workplace, and what are the emotions? How do you feel when you are engaged in those activities? Even think about those activities. Some of these emotions can arise in our mind. So think about one or two activities at the workplace that energizes you and the associated emotions. So if anybody wants to share through the chat, that would be great. Sometimes, it really helps people to see an example or two. If not, still do it. Thank you, Steve. And thank you, Carla. So as we can see, some of these, what we are seeing, like Carla is talking about community recruitment, right? So it gives Carla some excitement and also passion, like connect with the passion. Okay, so even Steve is talking about that the activity he identified, the emotions are engaged and energized. So icebreakers before work, Thank you. Meditate, some of you do that. And brainstorming with team members, planning a project, helping a visitor. Thank you. So it's very, very important for us to be very aware, self-aware, what are those activities that energizes me? And not only just there, but also what are the emotions that come along with that. Then the next is another important question to ask ourselves. Are those part of our day-to-day work, day-to-day activities? Right? Sometimes we know what energizes us, but we forget to incorporate them on a regular basis. But of course, they have to be incorporated appropriately, right? I mean, be relevant to what our responsibilities are for that day, what we are trying to accomplish. But it's important for us to remember that and pay attention to that and bring them in to the day's activities at the appropriate time, so we know when we need more energy, what are those activities and what are the activities that we don't need a lot of energy. So, for example, if there is an activity that energizes me when I do it, when do you think, if, okay, let me ask you, if there is as some of you had mentioned here, some of the activities, so if there is an activity that really energizes you on your day's agenda, if you have the choice, when would you include that during the day? Generally, when would you do that? During the day, if you have a, thank you, AJ. Exactly. One of the guidance, these experts who have done this research around energy management, what they bring to our attention is when we are actually sequencing activities, to really pay attention to the ones that energizes us and then do them when our actual energy is down. It makes sense, right? So if it is in the afternoon, late afternoon, when we have taken care of all the rest, now we are trying to do something, then it makes so much sense to do something that you don't need energy because it energizes you. So when our energy is down, that's the time to use it, right? So it again recharges our battery. Thank you. All right, now looking at the other side, what physical and mental reactions do you experience when you have to do energy draining activities? Now think about the other side of the coin. What are some of the things you have to do them on a weekly or a daily basis, on a regular basis, but you know? So you get headaches, it can create stress, apathy. So it's very, very important, again, for us to, yes, sometimes we feel tired and confused, right? So our inability, the mental fog, that our inability to think clearly. So it's very, very important for us to know what those emotions, physical and mental reactions or emotions are, so we can really identify what's going on at that time. Right? Sometimes I may, like for example, if I'm getting a headache, I'm working, if I'm not clearly aware of the fact, I may associate it with thinking, okay, maybe I am getting a flu or something, which may not necessarily be the case, because it may be because I'm doing this specific activity. Now I'm self-aware. When I do this specific activity, these are some of the emotional or physical reactions I have, right? Or my ability to not think clearly. So I know, so I can manage that when that happens. So then I know, like, okay, maybe I need to step out of the activity for a few minutes if it requires focused thinking, but it is not the type of activity that energizes me, but still I need to give, deliver my best, knowing the fact now it is not allowing me to be very focused because it's an energy draining activity. That self-awareness allows me to pull out of that moment, take a break, whatever I need to do in order to be able to go and refocus on that. Because if you look at these statistics, I'm not going to read them aloud, but just take a quick look at them. Sometimes we talk about these things, but when you look at it in numbers, it's just amazing how much people are suffering mentally and physically, and also the amount of resources that we have to allocate to address some of these mental and physical issues that comes out of this lack of time management. And then, of course, the financial. I mean, just look at that, right? U.S. companies losing between 200 to 300 billion a year. So it's very, very important for us to, keep those in mind. And then I like this statement. I'm sure most of you know this. Stress spelled backward is desserts, right? So that's our opportunity. How can we turn the stress around? All right. So taking control over your energy draining activities. So as we said, what are some of the activities that exhaust us or drain our energy, and what are the emotions associated with them? So I'm again kindly inviting each one of you, not necessarily now, but these are some of the things to take away. And when on your own, take a moment and meditate on these important questions and really become aware, become very clearly aware, self-aware about what those are and what are those responses or the emotions associated with them. And then the next important question is, how can we minimize those energy draining, stress inducing activities so they do not, impact our work, our ability. So let's get some thoughts. What are some ways that some of you deal with these energy draining or stress inducing activities, and to minimize or reduce the negative impact they have on in your daily work? So what are some of your mechanisms? Okay, mixing up activities during the day. Thank you. So that kind of, keep that energy balance. Yes, so planning around, right? Yeah, how you manage, right? Because again, good point. We really have to remind ourselves our individual capacity as a human being. Just because I may be ambitious and think I can do more than what I actually can do, then I'm operating from a false assumption, which is going to backfire on me, take a toll on my own mental and physical well-being. Because as we know, a glass can hold so much water. Just because, I have a jug of water and keep pouring, the glass will only hold what it can hold. So really paying attention to that, and then, spreading that work so that way it's not taking too much of a toll whenever we have the ability to do that. Great. These are some great ideas. Thank you. And yes, thank you for bringing the exercise piece to the table, because that's a great segue to my next piece. And I know that most of you do this. Some of us do it in our mind, that, telling ourselves, okay, I need to start doing exercise. But sometimes, we really have to ask ourselves and also be realistic, because sometimes when we even have a thought like wanting to do exercise, we may take it in a very sophisticated level. Maybe that is why we procrastinate not doing it, because we might be thinking, okay, I need to allocate 1 hour or 45 minutes. I need to go to the gym, or I need to have the equipment, or whatever that is. Not necessary always, right? Exercise is something we can just do it in our own cubicle. It can be a mental exercise or simple stretching, physical exercise. Even that little exercise can go a long way. So I like this list. As some of you may be very familiar with Spark people. I borrowed it from their site. 13 tips, and they are very simple, right? It's not rocket science, but sometimes these are the very same simple habits that we forget, right? So I will tell you, number one, this is something I observe. I mean, I have to share this with you even in my training rooms, whether it is the Vista leaders, Vista members, or any other audience out there. A lot of people don't drink water, enough water. I mean, it's as we know, it is such an important need. And then cutting back on the amount of soda, I will tell you that I can attest to that, because many years ago, I myself, when as a trainer, some of the stuff that I do is training. So I had this tendency to have a soda on my table. Not one soda, when it is over, then I get another one. And then now it's been a long time, maybe about 15 years ago, I decided I'm going to stop drinking soda. It just did, amazing things. I cannot even explain how my body started feeling. I did not feel the same tiredness when I was drinking soda. My focus, my energy level was so much better. So little things like that. So just take a quick look at it. Not we are going to go through everything. Again, these are some gentle reminders. And what I encourage you to do as you are looking at this list, if there are two or three items, they are important, but they always kind of, faded away from your attention. I would encourage you to write 1 or 2 down that you are going to say, okay, from today, I'm going to start doing this. Just maybe start at a simple level, but I'm going to really leave some of these that I knew I wanted, but I didn't start doing. At least 1 or 2 that you can pick up from this list, I would encourage you to do so. Thank you. And yes, and Jessica's comment also is, I think it's a good, another helpful reminder. What can we do to create self-accountability, right? So in her case, she has somebody else that she is doing this with. So even if she is trying to sort of, walk away, the other person is there to either remind or herself, know that it's a commitment. So that also allow us to do. Thank you, Rana. I can drink more water. Thank you. I think we all can do that, and it's very, very important. And the last thing I want to just again remind ourselves, some of you are doing a lot of studies or reading about neuroscience or neuro leadership or brain science, and more and more. We knew this. I mean, generations after generations knew this. But now we are at least willing to accept it because the science is proving it or continue to prove that, and that is getting enough sleep. That is huge. Like that's why, I mean, here we cannot still do that, but in some, cultures, we know people even, they work very hard, but they even take afternoon naps. That really made them to again come back to work and be even better. And today scientists are recognizing it, and there is also this thought even in the educational sector, even in schools or colleges, that there should be this built-in, actually kids can take, these short naps during the day that will really help them to their brains to be able to absorb what they are getting at a time and internalize them, and that which will help them to pass this information knowledge from short-term memory to long-term memory. So there are so many benefits, right? But those are big cultural changes to happen in the future. There are some places that's picking up on some of these new learnings and the importance of this. Okay, here's another book. I know some of you always look for some additional resources. So maybe some of you have read this, The Winner's Brain. And in that, as you can see, the last chapter talk about not only, physical exercise, but brain exercise. And it gives some great ideas how to, continuously stimulate our brains. So our, it becomes like our muscles, body muscles, the brain muscles. We have to give it exercises and the importance of nutrition, and then as you can see, sleep. So that's a great chapter in that book to get additional ideas and strategies. All right, now let's take another look at some of the statistics out there. So I'm going to invite you to take a look at it silently. So isn't that amazing what you see on the screen, right? And we are not talking about like going to the gym and spending 2 hours. We are what we see here is just exercise before work or during lunch breaks, right? So again, the importance of doing some exercise, how the impact that it could have on our work. Now, time management conversation would not be complete if we also don't ask ourselves, so how do we waste time? Because some of us are experts in some of these areas. So there are so many different ways that we waste time, but I'm going to share with you some of the 5 common aspects out there that at the workplace, how employees, how workers, leaders, managers, supervisors could waste their time. Lack of or unclear personal and professional goals. So that is a question to ask ourselves in a minute. All this will take a quick look at those, but let's take a look at the big picture. Second one, becoming a victim of others' need to kill time. We'll explore what those are. Lack of awareness about subtle time robbers, right? Sometimes we are not aware who those time robbers are. Lack of recallable organization. Organization is one thing, but recallable organization is another thing. Because sometimes you will walk into an office and see everything is so neat and organized. But if you ask for something, the individual cannot really figure out where the thing is, although it looks so organized. So that's why I call it recallable organization. Lack of schedules, and as one of you said right at the beginning, when we talked about the importance, prioritization, right? So those are, I mean, there are many others, of course, but these are some of the 5 main time wasters. So lack of personal and professional goals. Here's the question. I know some of you do. Maybe some of your members may not have this. And that's another reason that people have challenge in managing their time efficiently, because there's no overall, right, like a destiny in mind. If I know what my goals are, then I'm better aware. Because I'm better aware of those, I will always pay attention to how I spend my time, because I want to make sure my time is spent meaningfully, because I have these goals, directions that I'm trying to achieve, both personal and professional. So that's a question I'm going to, not that you are going to share now, but this is something I'm asking you to think about. If you do not have, even if you have personal and professional goals written for yourselves, revisit them. Of course, we need to revisit them very often. Otherwise, what's the purpose of having those, right? They have to be breathing, frequently visited goals. So even if you have those, I would encourage you, like sometime soon, re-look at them and ask whether they are concrete enough. Because if they are too general, sometimes it's very hard to use them to govern our day-to-day life, which again has so much to do with time management as well. Second time waster, becoming a victim of others' need to kill time. Just look at this statistic. 7 times an hour being interrupted. That's huge, right? How many of you don't have to tell us the story, but how many of you would say that you experience this to be the case? That you feel like there are unnecessary interruptions during the day that really take away your quality time or your time that you could use for more quality work. Several of you, right? So this is very, very important. So we really need to ask ourselves, how is this happening? Here's a question I invite you to think about. Are there individuals who waste my time to kill their time? Thank you, Steve. And I was going to, that's my next question. As Steve points out, I coach them as well. You know, it's a question that has, two sides to that. First is, we can ask, are there individuals in my office? They are very nice, very kind. I like them so much, but this specific individual might have a tendency just to drop by and talk about maybe yesterday's some kind of a sport game that was on the TV or whatever, and has a tendency to, have a long conversation about that, very emotional conversation. Do I like sport? maybe you like it too, but they are having the conversation at the wrong time, right? Because this individual could be the same person that you normally share lunch together. So if I am aware this person's tendency, how this person unconsciously maybe, unintentionally maybe, take my time away by getting these conversations going, if I'm very aware of that, I could sort of say, and when I say it a couple of times, the message will be clear. Whenever this individual gets to that conversation, hey, yeah, I really want to talk about that. Hey, let's talk about during lunch, right? So we kind of set boundaries. Now, when I don't do it, and I don't like what's happening, but when I don't do it, what am I doing? I'm telling that person, hey, it is okay. Come and talk to me anytime. I just have the time to have those conversations. That's what the message is, right? We are not necessarily saying that, communicating it through words, but by not doing anything about it, just accommodating and accepting, I am creating, I'm inviting that atmosphere. So as Steve said, do I also do it to other people without thinking, right? So sometimes we need to ask ourselves, when I want to get a glass of water, and when I walk to the water cooler, wherever I need to get the water, or to the kitchen, I may be passing 5 or 6 or, couple of cubicles, other officers. Now I need to ask myself, whenever I get up and go to get that glass of water, should take maybe a minute? Is it taking 15 minutes to be back to my table? If so, what am I doing? Maybe again, without thinking, I may have a habit. As I walk each cubicle, there may be a couple of doors. I just step in or, put my head in and just get into a conversation that is not needed at that time. But I have maybe created a habit. And maybe it is taking, when I add up, it's taking so much time out of my day, right? So very, very important. And also, some of you have challenges at your workplace because you may not necessarily have, a closed office or anything like that. So it's very easy for people to have a conversation with us over the half-built wall or through the, door or the entrance. There's maybe not even a door. So what I might do, if I'm seeing certain patterns, when I talk with work, sometimes, it's very important for to be able to focus on some type of work. I just want you to know, I'm going to have this sign. Will it be okay with all of you? I can just put it out there. So you know that, that time I'm actually focusing on something unless it's an emergency. That I would very much appreciate, everybody knowing that. Whatever, however you say that, there are certain little things we can actually bring to the context. And as a leader, when we do that, maybe other people can also learn from that, right? So this is a big, big problem that people don't want to talk about this because it's a very sensitive issue, but this is one of the biggest time killers. So how do I know what are those subtle time killers are? So here's one way you can do that. Maybe some of you are doing this. And what I will do towards the end of the conversation, I will allow you to download 2 templates, this one and another one. It's very easy. I'll tell you how to download it from the webinar. If you have difficulty, you can shoot me an email later. I can email it to you. So here's one tool. Maybe some of you are very familiar with this. This is called My Activity Log, right? So maintaining an activity log to really get a good hold of how I spend my time. So if you are doing this, you have to do it for a couple of days in a sequence, right? So at least for a week, because then you get a good hold of how your week is spent, not just only for a day. But however, you do it, you use the template, one template for each day. So you write the date, then as the day is going, I'm just without any judgments, nothing. I mean, don't go there. Just on an ongoing basis for that week, every day, write down at different times from 8 o'clock, whenever you start till you go home. What are the activities that you seems to be doing? Major activities, and just write down the duration, right? So maybe like first thing in the morning at 8 o'clock or 8:30, maybe an activity you do is to check your email. So I would write check my emails. Then I will look at my time when I'm done before I go to the next activity. And if I had spent 1 hour, I will just write 1 hour. So like just do a log at least for a week. Then after you have done that, look for patterns. So if you are seeing a pattern that almost every day during the week, you are spending 1 hour and 30 minutes, let's say 90 minutes, just checking email in the morning, and again another 1 hour in the afternoon, but let's take one at a time. Then I see, okay, I have this activity that I spend time about 90 minutes checking my emails, whatever that is, time. Then I need to ask then after the week, when you are analyzing this, then I ask myself, so what is the level of importance for this activity based on my role and responsibilities? Is it high, medium, or low? So I will indicate that in the appropriate column. Then looking at, I ask myself, how much I spend time, is it reasonable? Is it just I just need to maintain, that's a good time? Or am I spending too much time? Or is this an activity I really don't think I should be doing? It doesn't really make any sense. Is this something I can eliminate, take out of my day-to-day work? Or is this something that is very important, high importance, but I may be not spending enough time because I may be spending more time for other not so important activities? So is this something I need to increase my time? So this way, it will help me to understand how I use my time on a day-to-day basis, on a regular basis, which means that will also inform me if there are subtle time robbers, who are those robbers, right? Or what are those activities that I may be spending more time than I needed to. Okay, so for example, when I figure out, if I see I'm spending 90 minutes checking my emails, what I will realize, wow, why should I take 90 minutes? Oh, that's because the moment I open my email, then I go to the internet and, then I look at other, different resources or whatever, I get distracted. So that's a good reminder for me. If that is not necessarily what needs to happen, but it is happening, now I can catch that subtle time robber, right? So that's the time log. Again, some statistics about people not being able to. People are generally, a lot of people are good in their organization, but they have challenges not being able to recall what they are looking for. And again, look at, these statistics just drive it home, right? All right. So important questions along those lines to ask ourselves: how do I currently organize my information, documents, whether they are, hard copies or electronic? What else can I do to improve my organizational methods? For example, sometimes I would walk into somebody's office and ask for a certain resource. The person say, hey, yeah, I have that, and then take a couple of disks or USBs, for example. And the person would look at the 3 or 4 USBs and say, I'm sure it's in one of those. Let me put this. Let me put this. So they are going back and forth. The person is going back and forth to identify where that document is. So to me, one way I might organize that is just like having a menu, what's in that USB. I could even have a printout attached to the USB, wherever I keep it. So I know exactly what's in that specific electronic media, rather than having to, go through so many different things, whether it's a disk or even the electronic folders, because that's a challenge, because we get so much information, we create folders, so many folders, then we bury it in a subfolder, then we bury it in another folder. So when we really have to get to that information, there are so many different levels. And if you add the time sometimes we spend just trying to figure out where something is, we may not even notice. It could be a lot of time that we are spending. That's because we are organizing, but we cannot, our organization is not recallable organization, right? It's easily to connect with when we need. So the other one is lack of schedules and prioritizing. And that's our last time waster. And then we are going to look at another just a few steps to time management. So with this one, as you can see, 1 hour of planning will save 10 hours of doing. That is huge, right? So some of you do this, and that is to maintain active things to do list. I see a lot of people are good about having a things to do list, but adhering to it and using it in a meaningful way becomes a question. Sometimes people have to have another list in order to remind them to look at the things to do list, right? Sometimes, we just lose the value of it. So here's one way of doing this, and I have a template for this as well that you can actually utilize in your own work that will help you to prioritize. So the way that I have created this things to do template to help us prioritizing. Sometimes we have a challenge when we go to the office in the morning or the day before. When we think about the day's work, we know what has to happen, but sometimes we struggle how to prioritize them meaningfully. So here's what the way this template works. And in my the one that I will give you, it has all the instructions. It's a Word document electronically. You can see how it will work for you. So what I normally do would suggest on that date, whatever the date, you write down all the key activities under the task and activities on different lines. Don't worry about prioritizing. Don't worry about when you are going to schedule it as well, right? Because this is what sometimes creates stress. Just write down, okay, today I have to do this 10 activities. Just write down the 10 activities. Then write down how much time am I allocating for each activity. Let's say 30 minutes for first one, 1 hour for the second one, like that. Now, still these activities are not prioritized, right? We have just looked at the activity, allocated time. Then, after I do that, then I look at this list and I see, okay, which one should I do first? Based on the urgency, based on the energy, all that good stuff. I might see the item that listed on the fourth line is the number one. So under priority, I put number one there. So likewise, I will put the priority number based on, again, the urgency, importance, energy, all that, then prioritize them. So again, my priority list is not in order, right? Because I may have put number one to the fourth item. Doesn't matter. Once I do all that, then what I can do, as you know, in the Word document, the way I have created the template, I highlight the priority column, and then I organize it by order. And then what it will automatically put the first one on the top, then second, third, fourth, fifth, like that. Now I have a prioritized things to do list. Then I come to the schedule time. Then I look at number one, whatever that became number one, I look at allocated time 30 minutes. Then I know I'm starting work at 8 o'clock. I would say schedule time is 8. And the second one needs 90 minutes. So the first one only needed 30 minutes. Then I know the schedule time for this will be 8:30, right, till 10. So it really helps us in a very methodical, simplistic manner to create a things to do list that is, very intentionally developed with the right priorities or right sequencing of the priorities for the day, and with right allocation of time and schedule time. So that's one of the tools that you will have access if you are interested. Okay, so right now I would like you to quickly look at these time wasters, 5 time wasters, and at least identify 2 that you are making a commitment that you are going to come back from today. Maybe you already are, but like at least you are saying, okay, I'm going to be more forceful working on this. So take a look at it, at least identify 1 or 2 that you would like, that you are committed, because as I said, time management is a commitment, right? It's not just a piece of information or knowledge. All right, next, before I share with you, the last piece is to share with you 6 steps to time management. I want to give an opportunity for sharing, wisdom sharing here. What are some other time management strategies or techniques that you currently use that seems to work for you that you would like to share with your colleagues here? So let's use the chat function. Anything outside of what we talked about that you have found to be very effective for you as a Vista leader? I want to give you all the opportunity if you have such good practices. Thank you. Now we are seeing a couple of popping up in the chat window, so please pay attention while you are sharing yours with each other. Yep, using these electronic functionalities like alarms and reminders. Yep, every day making it a practice to write down things. And also, you know what, as we know, when we actually write it down, I would even say like if you use like by hand, it can also have a much more stronger commitment to what we are going to do. Keeping a planner, again, yes, using those electronic functionality. Yeah, both combination of electronic calendars and papers is always a great idea because, technology always, they do not always work fully. Yep. Again, the importance of using planners. Yes, that's a good practice too. When you complete something, to cross it out, because it's also an internal motivator. Because when you look at your list, as you things are getting crossed out, it reminds you are making progress, and then our attention to the remaining is becomes even more clear. Yes, that's also a great technique to have other people support, right? As Carla pointing out, sharing that with my supervisor. So my supervisor will be understanding about my priorities for that day, and maybe even helping. And even if there is a task that the supervisor is bringing to the table, with that understanding, the supervisor might say, hey, Carla, I know this is not on your things to do list, and I know you are working on something very, very urgent and important. But if you could kindly, like, maybe sometime during this week, accommodate this task, take care of it, I would very much appreciate. Isn't that a better conversation than the supervisor coming and saying, not knowing what your daily plan is, hey, I want you to do this, and that is going to take away your ability to what you really wanted to work on, unless it's an emergency, which we understand, right? Urgent need. So thank you for those strategies. So the last piece I want to share with you is 6 steps to time management. First is becoming aware and acknowledge the need for change, right? So that's what some of the things we talked about, doing a need assessment and becoming more self-aware about our time management challenges, habits, so we have more control over it. Then identify the problem areas and the opportunities, such as we talked about, asking ourselves, what are my energy boosters? What are my energy sappers? And what are those time wasters? Then, of course, making a commitment to change behavior, right? And this is huge. Our attitude, some of our attitudinal aspects we may have to change, some of our beliefs, right? So this is about a mindset to develop a renewed relationship with time management. If we want something to be different, then we have to start relating to it differently. Otherwise, there won't be a change, right? It will be the same old way of doing things or old habits. Identify and develop and implement techniques. I kindly invite you to do it consistently, at least for 3 weeks, if you really want to have an impact. Because when we do it consistently for 3 weeks at least, it helps us to turn it to a more of a habit. And then we will also see the outcomes, the impact. And then we also need to time ask ourselves, how am I doing, right? Monitoring and progress, and making whatever the adjustments necessary to go towards our goal, which allows us, as we have talked about during your leaders orientation, that true transformation, right? So moving this newly creating behavior about managing ourselves, managing our energy against the time, then it ends up being a habit. Okay? So with that, the classic time management question is always, is this the best use of my time right now? That's the simplest but most important question that we can ask ourselves on an ongoing basis to make sure we are doing the right thing, right? So time management is not doing the wrong things quicker. As you see, that just gets us nowhere faster, but time management is doing the right thing at the right moment. So with that, these were the 3 goals we had. I hope we had met those, and that is to examine factors and behaviors that contribute to inefficient time utilization and procrastination. We looked at some techniques and tools, and also making a personal commitment. So with that, I'm going to open the survey. So please complete the survey. As you are doing the survey, once the survey is done, I will pull up those 2 documents for you to download if you're interested, and those were the time log and then things to do list. So if you could kindly do the poll. I still see some of you are not started on it yet. I would very much appreciate, because it's very important for us to have the poll done. And then in 2 minutes or so, I will get those documents up there. So please continue to do the poll for those of you who are still working on it. And in the meantime, I'm pulling up those 2 documents. Sometimes WebEx takes a little while to pull them up. For some reason, if they do not show up on the screen, as I said, you can send me an email, and I'll be more than willing to share those with you. And thank you, everybody, for taking your time today and engaging and contributing in this very important conversation. So with that, have a great weekend. And if those 2 files don't show up on your screen, I think WebEx seems to be having some technical difficulty. So just shoot me an email if you're interested. I will send those to you. Okay? Thank you, everyone. Take care. And thank you for all the great you are doing for your VISTA members and their projects. All the best.